Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Golden Spotlight. Now, at this time, I would like my guests to please introduce themselves.
Do we go now?
Yes.
Hello everyone, I'm Kateri Gutierrez, one of the co-founders of Collective Avenue Coffee Cooperative.
Hi, my name is Alfredo Carlos. I'm a professor here in political science and Chicano Latino studies, and also the founder of the Foundation for Economic Democracy.
Excellent. Now, the first thing I like to do is I like to get my guests to start from the beginning. First, let's start off with your K-12 years. Tell me, what was life growing up as a student in public school?
I guess growing up, going to public school, I really liked school a lot. My mom says that I always wanted to go to school even if it was raining and she didn't want to take me. But yeah, I found joy in going to school, and then it was more of a social thing too. Liked hanging out with my friends. That's where I saw them.
And for me, I lived in a sort of poor neighborhood in the harbor area of LA, and so I remember getting bused out to school. And I mean, in terms of how it was, I remember school was what my parents told me I needed to do really well in to advance in society, so I wouldn't have jobs like they had. They were working people, so that was sort of my experience. I had a tremendous impact on sort of the decisions I made in terms of what to study later on in life, and sort of the work that actually we're kind of doing now relates to sort of working people.
Excellent. Now, most would say that senior year is the most stressful in high school. Walk us through, what was high school like for you as a senior?
Yeah, like, do you want to answer that one? Senior year was stressful, but it was exciting at the same time because I was really excited to go to college. And I think it was more just life-changing, and I was always introspective and thinking about what the next step was going to be. It was very competitive too. All my friends and I were checking in with each other and seeing where we were going to go next. A lot of deadlines to meet, but luckily we had really supportive teachers helping us along the way or just cheering us on.
For me, senior year was actually kind of easy because applications for like college were like was it like November? So like the rest of the year was kind of cake. So the harder year for me was 11th grade. But it was also a time that like you knew it was going to end, so it wasn't stressful in terms of I mean I was working as I had a job in AMC theaters back then, but it was stressful because you knew that like a lot of things were going to change really fast after that year. But I have fond memories of my senior year.
Now, everybody has that one subject that they either disliked or they struggled with the most in public school. What was that for you?
Can you say that again?
So everybody has that one subject usually that they either struggled with the most or they kind of like didn't like. It was their least favorite subject in school. What was that for you?
It was Algebra 2 for me. I don't know. I like calculus better, but Algebra 2 for some reason I just didn't like. I think I kind of just gave up on it, and I wish I didn't. Because it could be used in other ways now in real life. So.
You're going to find this really ironic. I really didn't like history or like government. And when I went to UC Santa Barbara, I actually majored in history, and now I'm in political science. But it's because the way that it was taught in K-12 like did involve brown people a lot. So that's why I didn't really, it's not that it was difficult for me, I just didn't enjoy it because I was learning about a lot of things that I didn't connect with personally.
So senior year, as it is about to end, everybody asked themselves the question, what's next? Did you know right away what was next? What happened?
Yeah, I knew what was next because I wanted to start my own business. And so I looked for schools that had good business programs. So I applied to Berkeley, got into it. And so I knew that it was going to be a new step, and I was excited to take that. Yeah. I guess I was really lucky kind of having an idea of what I wanted to pursue right away. I know that not a lot of people have that luck of, because I think it's a kind of a luck thing. It's connecting a lot of things together to find out what you want to pursue.
I mean, I knew I was going to go to college in the sense that I remember we visited UC Santa Barbara before I applied, and I loved the school. And I even bought a sweatshirt, and my college counselor was like, "Hey, hold up, you don't know if you're going to get in, you know." I was like, "No, I'm getting in." And she's like, "You don't know that?" I was like, "No, I do." I was really stubborn, and I got in, so like I knew that that's where I was headed. I didn't even need to wait for other acceptance. I knew I wanted to be in Santa Barbara.
Now, the transition from high school to higher education, obviously the campus is huger than high school. You know, walk us through your first semester. Did you get to start off with friends, or were you alone and lost?
In college?
Yeah, the campus, you know, just being in a new environment, you know?
I was definitely overwhelmed, but I was excited too because a couple of my high school friends went to Berkeley as well. So it was like 10 of us. And we were all just the same group of nerds in high school. So it was just kind of like we same kids, new location, but definitely having to, luckily I wasn't shy, so I made a lot of friends along the way. Yeah.
And for me, it was sort of, I had a soft landing because I was an EOP student, and EOP had a sort of summer transition program that I was able to meet a lot of people, and I made a lot of friends. I think what was difficult was the pacing, so we went to and the level of work that is sort of expected, and also the freedom, like, you know, you only have to go to class, and even then sometimes, you know, nobody takes roll, so it was sort of a learning experience and trying to like adulting, you know, essentially.
Now, stress management. I know that usually people would say that midterms and finals are like the real like major ones. How did you, what strategies did you use to deal with midterms and finals and time management?
I think I also use EOP resources or really just surrounding myself with disciplined people. I always carry a planner with me, so that helps. But I mean, I always procrastinated. Who am I kidding? But yeah, somehow it got done.
For me, I don't think, I'll be honest, I don't think I managed it well when I was an undergrad. I was a procrastinator. I hope none of my students are listening to me currently, so they're not procrastinating on their work. But I just surrounded myself with people that had a lot of information that I can draw on in terms of like needing like content support with. You know, if I was writing a paper, you know, I'd ask a lot of friends about, you know, especially older friends, if, you know, what they knew about that, stress management. You try to sort of make time for yourself, you know, to deal with stress. I think that's really important. I learned that along the way, you know, to find outside things that you're interested in, so you're not solely focused on school and work 100% of the time.
Tell me about the journey, knowing what your major will be. Did you change your major a couple of times or anything like that? Picked a minor? What happened?
I definitely, well, I was intended business, but then I realized that there wasn't a lot of the social part of it, and I didn't want to be like a finance person. I wanted to see how do corporations or how does corporate America impact society. So, and then I dabbled with the idea of political economy, but then everyone told me, and then I kind of noticed that the major there, the department there was mostly just to create politicians. I'm like, I don't want to be a politician. And then I saw cultural studies, but that was if you want to do the Peace Corps after college. And I'm like, okay, no, I want to stay local. I want to work with something that I already know, because that's how I know I can impact more efficiently. Because it's cool to do like programs and stuff, but I like to really know that I'm making a difference. And so I moved to American Studies, where I did it's interdisciplinary, so I use classes from different departments, and the majority of them were still business classes, but I just got to incorporate it with American cultures classes, from like theming America to the American teenager, understanding these social constructs that we've created in America and how they kind of spill over to the rest of the world. So yeah, it was cool.
And for me, it was, it's really sort of odd, because I was also wanting to be a business major because I wanted to make a lot of money and sort of take my parents out of work. But I got to campus and there was a lot of sort of political things going on. The students on our campus at UC Santa Barbara were fighting sort of tuition increases. There was an attack on ethnic studies classes, and I was in a Chicano studies class, and I actually got swept up into a student walkout that happened on our campus, and we ended up taking over the chancellor's office like my first couple of weeks of school. And that really politicized me, so I ended up majoring in Chicano studies, and I got really interested in sort of working class history and Chicano history. So I also majored in history, but I also switched. That's what I did as an undergrad, and then when I actually got my master's here at Cal State Long Beach in 2008, I did it in political science, which is the field I ended up getting my PhD in. But within even poli-sci, like I've switched. My concentrations I've been comparative political science, done international relations. I've finished my PhD in political theory, specifically political economy and American politics, racial and ethnic politics specifically. So I'm all over the place.
Which brings me to the next topic, student involvement. Some people, they sometimes go straight to class and go back home. Tell us, did you get to participate in clubs and stuff like that?
Yeah, so at UC Berkeley, I was part of the Latino Business Student Association. I think right before even going to school there, I met some of the club members during my senior year. There was a trip that a couple of us went to, sponsored by, I think, EOP or Raza Recruitment. And so that's where I learned about the club. I'm like, this is perfect, Latinos and business. So I was there. I was really involved. Actually, I'm pretty involved with their alumni association right now. It's the 20-year anniversary for the club, so it's pretty exciting stuff to just help, even though I'm in LA. My scholarship group, I got a full ride scholarship through the Alumni Association, and that one was really cool because it was a lot of different majors, low-income students, whether they be Latino, Asian, Black, white. There was a lot of backgrounds, so it was really cool just exposing myself to different paths and stories. So I was really involved in that one too, to the point that we even helped change some of the details in the operating agreement or the operations at the alumni house to make it more equitable for all scholarship recipients, because there's different programs and it wasn't being accessible for all students. So it was really cool. It was a labor of love. Some of my best friends are from both of those clubs. Actually, all my best friends are from both of those clubs. So that's where I did the majority of my time, and did a couple other clubs on the side, but those were my main two.
Yeah, I got really involved also in being at Cal State Long Beach. I remember being a student and always like walking in my car when I was leaving. There'd be a lot of people eating their lunch in their car. If you're trying to get ahead in this society, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of Cal State Long Beach students make is like not staying on campus and networking. Your degree is going to definitely help you get a job, but it's your networks that are going to like guide you towards the different types of work you're going to do. And so, I mean, that's not why I got involved. I got involved because I started caring about sort of community issues. I started realizing why I grew up in poverty and sort of like these sort of systemic kind of issues. But one of the things that really sort of led to, I got involved in what was known as Mecha. On our campus it was called El Congreso. On this campus it's called La Raza, which I'm actually their advisor. And I learned a lot of skills. I learned how to organize events. I learned how to plan speakers series. I learned how to actually go out in the community and organize community members for a lot of different sort of political campaigns. And you learn how to facilitate meetings. You learn all kinds of really important skills that have really helped me in sort of the real world. Before I took some time off in between grad school and my undergrad, and I actually worked as a labor organizer. And most of the jobs I've had outside of academia have actually been a direct result of the networks that I built and the people that I met who would tell me about job openings. And obviously my skills that I learned in student organizing helped with that, me actually get the job. So if folks are out there listening, I highly recommend that you all get involved and learn a lot of those skills that you're not going to learn just in the classroom. You're going to learn by networking with people and getting to know, who your fellow classmates are.
Tell us about your inspirations growing up, mentors.
Oh my God, I don't know. There's so many. A lot of teachers. I mean, even just like my mom working hard. She didn't get to go to school, so that was a big motivation. Is that because she didn't go past 6th grade because she had family duties with her siblings and then moving to the US. So for me, it was a big thing of like, and she always said, like, nobody could take your education away from you. And you don't want to become dependent on other people, so always go to school for that. I mean, everyone has their own reasons, but that in itself was always my motivation. I wanted to make sure that I never felt too dependent on anyone, but also mentors, just, I think, I don't know, sometimes your own friends can be your mentors. I think if you observe your journey, share your journey with friends, and they share theirs with you, you can kind of see that no matter like what they're studying or what you're studying, you're kind of going through the same thing, and just making sure that you're being honest with yourself. That's a thing that I notice a lot of friends, even now as adults, aren't honest with what their passions are because they're afraid of the lifestyle change. And so I really look up to people who are willing to change their lifestyle or willing to sacrifice some things for others. But I mean, I don't even like the word sacrifice because you're moving towards your dreams, towards your goals, and that's going to be work in itself. So it's really not as big. It's more to sacrifice your time doing things you don't like than sacrifice a lifestyle that doesn't even match what you truly want to do. So
I think for me it was my parents, and also the sacrifices they made, getting to the United States and sort of, trying to create a better life for us. In similar situation, my mom didn't really go beyond, I think it was 3rd or 4th grade. My dad never graduated from high school, and sort of seeing like how they like existed in this sort of society in a really sort of in a workplace where they didn't value them, that really motivated me to do well. And also a lot of my peers. I grew up in a really rough neighborhood, and a lot of my friends that necessarily didn't have the opportunity or they fell through the cracks, like they got involved in sort of gang activity, but like they never let me get involved, even when I wanted to. They always made sure that I didn't. And so I have a lot of respect for them growing up, and sort of, they saw something in me that maybe they wish they could have gone in the direction I went, but they protected me from falling through the cracks. So I kind of look up to them in that sense.
Lately, it's become more and more apparent that being bilingual is important. Tell us about the importance of being bilingual.
It's definitely something to take advantage of. Growing up, my parents didn't let me speak English at home, so that was a good thing. At the time, I didn't know that. But it's very necessary, and I'm a substitute teacher on the side, and I tell my students, like, do not be embarrassed about your language. You have no idea like how necessary it will be, especially if you travel. Like, everyone talks about how they always want to travel. Well, you actually do need Spanish, because a lot of people do speak Spanish, like for instance in Europe, or you have all of Latin America. You have like 2 entire continents where you may have to use Spanish if they don't know English. So it's very necessary, and really it's just we are such a diverse country here in itself, that you want to make sure that you're accessible to people and you also understand people, because in language itself, even if sometimes there aren't direct translations to things, so you kind of get those emotions when you know the language because they're unique to the language.
Yeah, I mean, being bilingual is really sort of an interesting topic for me, because I grew up when essentially, so it was sort of criminalized, to speak Spanish. Like historically, Chicanos who spoke Spanish in school would get corporal punishment. And in the 1990s, we banned bilingual education. And we live sort of in a backward society that teaches people they shouldn't speak Spanish at school, but then when you get to high school, you have to take 2 years of a foreign language, so you take Spanish. So it's actually really important for people culturally to be able to just be who they are, and for Mexican Americans, Latinos in general. A lot of that has to do with like speaking Spanish and being able to speak Spanish, and sometimes being bilingual, and code switching regularly on basis is actually something that studies actually show helps improve brain functions. There's some studies out there that prove that people who speak multiple languages actually have less incidence of Alzheimer's and sort of mental dementia. So I mean, from just a health perspective, like, bilingual education, but speaking bilingually is really important. Just sort of health effects, but it's also important culturally.
Now, so walk us through what happened after, graduating with your degrees, or even then. Tell us about all the jobs you guys had, leading up to where you are today.
I had a lot of internships. Let's see, in college, in high school, I just helped organize legal papers in Huntington Park with a local lawyer. So I got to know the difference between that's where I learned that lawyers don't all do the same thing. There's such a thing as workers' comp or immigration, or just there's so many things in law. And then let's see, in college I interned for Ernst & Young. It's a big accounting firm. So I learned about the different departments in accounting there, or the different things that they do. So that was pretty cool. Not my cup of tea. I'm too creative for accounting. I can't, but I have so much respect for people who do accounting every day, because it's a lot of work. Well, a lot of dedication and time. But I met a lot of cool people there, and going back to the networking thing, it's necessary to network. Even if it's not something that you're interested in, you need to build those bridges, because you never know what career paths you may take or what your peers may take, and how you can help each other, really. Always be of service, no matter who they are. Don't just do things for self-interest, just a plug in there. But then after that, I went over to the Target headquarters and worked as a business analyst there, specifically in their merchandise presentation department. So it's not necessarily marketing, but using both the psychology of the consumer, of the target consumer, and the data of business planning and determining how to place merchandise at Target to make you shop more. So I did that, and then after college, I was a manager at Disneyland. So I used a lot of what I learned in all my previous jobs and my research in school to that, and now I run Collective Avenue Coffee with my business partner Jonathan, who couldn't make it today, but we have an awesome partner here.
And I mean, mine's really long list, so I won't cover all of it, but just to give you sort of some background, I worked at AMC movie theaters when I was in high school. When I was in college, I became an EOP, peer advisor. Worked at Home Depot for a while, and eventually got into nonprofit work. I started working at a program for at-risk youth. I hate saying the word at-risk, but people know what I mean when I say it. And that really kind of impacted me in a positive way. I did that work for a couple of years, and then I got really frustrated with sort of always being on sort of the defensive in terms of social justice issues. So I was helping individuals, and I was helping maybe 1 out of every 10 students stay out of probation. And so I started thinking about, how can I have a larger impact? So after that, I went to go organize farm workers in Oxnard, and then that's really when I, decided to go back to graduate school, because I wanted to study societal, systemic issues, and I wanted to find solutions to really alleviate issues of poverty and alleviate sort of the problems that our communities face, having to do with money and not having enough, and housing issues, wages. And I came across this concept of economic democracy, which is why we're both kind of here together to talk about as best we can, to talk about sort of the kinds of jobs that are out there where workers get together and say, hey, we want to own our own business collectively. And so I don't necessarily want to do that. I'm a full-time professor here at Cal State Long Beach, but I did start a nonprofit because I want to help other people achieve businesses or create businesses that the workers are the ones that own the business, and they make decisions collectively together. And I just recently actually met Cattery, and really excited about the project they're working on, happy to support with what they're doing, and hopefully it's part of a larger sort of conversation we have in Southern California about these different types of economies that help working people.
And now the story of Collective Coffee. First I want to start off with the name. How did the name come about?
Collective Avenue Coffee was actually my business partner who came up with that name before I met him, because he used to sell coffee out of his garage, just doing pour-overs with friends for fun. I was working at Disney at the time, reached out, and through a mutual friend, because I was like, I want to start a worker-owned co-op, but I'm not an expert in coffee, and I want to do a coffee shop. And so I finally met Jonathan through a mutual friend, and he told me he had that name. I'm like, you know what, I think it fits because everyone works collectively.
I have a
so.
question, sorry, randomly.
Go for
Sorry,
it.
I'm all interrupting.
Yeah.
When did you find out about worker co-ops and how did you get the idea?
Oh, yeah, worker co-ops. I learned about it when I was in Berkeley, and I went to Cheese Board. Have you gone to Cheese Board? Yeah, so Cheese Board Collective. Yeah, I think that's how they have it registered. Cheese Board Collective is one of the best pizza places out there. Actually, in 2015, it was the top-rated pizza place in the country. So, and when my friend took me there, she's like, "Did you know this place is worker-owned? It's 100% owned by the workers." I'm like, "That's amazing! I'm mind blown." So that was like my freshman year of college, but it just in the back of my mind, I said, eventually, at some point in my life, I'm gonna start a co-op, and I'm gonna bring it to the community because we need that over there. Especially having grown up and in Linwood and seeing like, okay, there are businesses, but not a lot of them survive, and not a lot of our community members here actually have their own businesses. It's outsiders. So how can we teach our existing community how to be entrepreneurs? And I thought that would be the best route, is working together, because it's just more accessible. In our communities, we don't have that access of like just pulling $200,000 out of a bank and starting the business. So how do we work with what we got? So that's kind of how it started, is learning about that and then knowing that it existed in other places, and yeah.
The name. Sorry, I interrupted you. You can continue with the story. about
No,
the
that's
name,
pretty
but
much it. So on the name Collective Avenue, that's how we kept on with it, because collective is, I mean, people can think of it as an art collective, but Collective Avenue is just everyone working collectively. Yeah.
So tell us more about these co-op places.
So, worker cooperatives are just like any other business, except that there's a difference in ownership structure. So usually when you have a normal business or corporation, I'm gonna keep it business, like small business, so you sort of understand a little bit better. Corporation's not too different from that, but a business has usually one owner. Like somebody invests a lot of money, a lot of time of their own money and time to start a business, and because they own it in the U.S., they're the ones that legally have the right to all the benefits from the business, which the benefits are the profits. What they do is that they'll start a business and they'll employ a bunch of people. And usually, the money is being made, so after all costs are sort of taken into account, then that includes wages, they get to keep all the extra profit. And a worker co-op functions on a daily basis very similar to that. Like everybody's doing their job, everybody has different assignments, and like how that is decided is a little bit different, but the ownership structure is essentially that that extra money that would go to the owner is essentially split up amongst all the workers. So this is a really good model if you're trying to deal with sort of like stagnant economic development, in the sense that it puts more money into the pockets of the workers themselves, rather than like somebody like from an outside community, like she mentioned in Linwood. There's in a lot of Latino communities, there's businesses that are owned by people that don't live in that community. And so they have like liquor stores, they have different types of shops, people go in there, spend money there. But eventually that money gets taken out because it's being spent wherever the owners live. And the owners usually live in nicer neighborhoods, suburbs somewhere. And worker cooperatives combat that, because essentially it's the workers from Linwood or from Long Beach or from whatever neighborhood. If they get to own their own business, that means they're splitting the profit. And so no one's ever gonna like be a millionaire in a worker cooperative, but you can have a really good quality of life. She mentioned Cheese Board. Cheese Board is currently part of like a network of worker cooperatives. The other ones are known as the Arismendi Bakeries. But at that business, for instance, the worker co-op members there, they each are getting paid over $30 an hour, full benefits, healthcare, vacation, and they're all living comfortable lives. And so that's the goal, is to have workers own more of their business. And so, I mean, not more, but like own it equally. So that's the financial side of it. There's also like a more like human side aspect of it, is that when you own collectively a business, you have more decision-making power. You have the ability to participate in the conversations about making decisions. Hey, what kind of coffee should we own? What should we sell? Like, hey, what should our design be? Hey, what kind of bread, pastry should we shop from? And so there's a slew of other sort of decision makings that I think actually helps people essentially like just have more confidence in themselves, you know, knowing that like they are in a workspace where they're valued, where they have dignity, where they're able not to fear, you know, like getting fired if they don't show up. And they actually have more accountability. They're less likely to not want to show up because they actually care about their workplace because it's something that is a piece of theirs. And I mean, you feel the sort of.
Yeah,
like,
no, and it makes sense because people are less willing to, like, especially in the coffee scene, a lot of people work in coffee shops, but there's a lot of like quitting or trying other things because there's not that motivation because you just come in, make coffee, make a wage. But whereas in a worker-owned co-op, if you work harder, that means the business does better. And when the business does better, you make more. So it's a motivation for workers, the worker members to tag along and really just perform their best. So it's a motivation to work harder. Because when the business wins, everyone in the business, like in the co-op, wins. So yeah.
So I think we both feel, I mean, I'm not gonna speak for you, but I feel that like, I think she would agree, but I feel that like, it's more efficient because you don't have workers who are unhappy there. Generally speaking, like they want to, like people want to work more because they know that they're gonna get a direct benefit, right? Whereas opposed to if I work at a coffee shop and I'm getting paid, you know, $8-9 an hour, like if I work harder, like I'm not gonna get more. I might get a promotion, but like there's not enough like positions for everyone to get promoted, right? So like I just have to work hard enough not to get fired. And so in a worker cooperative, it's sort of the opposite. There is that motivation where you know that if you work better, you work more efficient. So to some degree, I think they're more efficient. And in general, I think, oh my God, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something else. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
Oh, here's the thing is that like we already perform work collaboratively. So, you know, when you're at a coffee shop, even if it's owned by one person, you're working with a team of other people to make sure that that day you have good sales. So it's not all that different. Like all the work that as a society we produce, you know, like people are doing construction. It's a collaborative effort to build this giant building, you know. And so this is just like who gets to benefit from that production in a worker cooperative differs. Instead of it being one person, it's actually shared. So, you know, people call it different things, shared economies, economic democracy, solidarity economy, but what we're talking about is an economy that benefits more people rather than less.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
You know, I always say that you never know who could be tuning in, and the fact that, you know, I mix things up and every week I interview different people, and every story is unique in its own way, and I try to have people from a variety of careers. So the one thing I like to do also is consider the fact that, you know, there could be an audience member listening right now that wants a career doing exactly what you do right now. So what tips do you have?
If you want to go the business route, be humble. Like really, it comes down to that. The older you get, the more you realize there's a lot of things you don't know, a lot of things you need to learn. And be willing to work for free with a purpose. So maybe not all your internships are going to be paid, and that's okay. But know that you walk away with some extra knowledge that you're going to use in another place, or it gets you closer to your goal. Sometimes your goal is not just a career, but a question you want to answer. So just in your life or whatever. But in terms of business, be humble, be willing to learn, and accept that you don't know everything. And going back to the networking, there's nothing more useful than that I've had in my career than networking. I network just for the sake of knowing what makes people tick. I love hearing about what makes people go on with their day and learn more, or what gets them what is it that they like to do, because then it keeps me motivated and reminds me of why I do what I do with Collective Avenue or any of my endeavors that are true to my passions, that align with my passions. Also, when you network, don't network with the intent of just receiving benefits, but when you network, always walk in being able to provide something too. It has to be an exchange. Nobody likes to be used. But if there is an exchange and networking, you need to be willing to provide that too. And to do that, you need to, again, sit down and prepare and make sure that you're also a connection willing to, like, be someone that people want to connect with, not just connect with everyone without giving back.
And the advice I would give folks is and it's really contrary to the advice that like we all give, and even the university itself gives, is they want you to pick a major that's marketable, that you can get a job. And students always get asked, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And that's a really boring question for me. I want to do lots of things. Maybe right now I want to be a professor, but maybe 5-10 years from now, like maybe I grow out of that. And so give yourself the space to like find the things that you really enjoy doing. Like, what are you passionate about? And be okay with the fact that that might change. Like right now I might be really passionate about, economic democracy and sort of helping other people start it. But maybe eventually like I'll actually want to like be part of one and actually help start an actual business. And maybe after that, like I'll move on to something else. And the society doesn't really tell you that. It says you should go to college because you're going to get a good job, and you should pick a job that you're going to make a lot of money in. And the reality is that like you can make money in lots of different things and just figure out the skills that you need to do that. But you should pick a job that's going to make you happy. And don't worry about marketability. As long as you have skills and you develop those, so learn those. Make sure you know how to organize events. Make sure you can work in a team. Make sure you know how to present. Pick up some design skills, and make yourself sort of indispensable. You'll be able to find a job that can help you pay the bills. But you should always strive to what you're passionate about. And for a long time, I was passionate about like learning, and I wanted to learn more about how the society functions and why it functions the way it does. So I went to school, and I kept going to school until I now have a PhD after my name. But I've never made decisions, or I did, but I got to the point where I realized that like, if I was making decisions solely on, what was like good financially, that I wasn't going to be happy. I actually used to have my license to sell stocks and bonds and stuff. And I wasn't happy doing that, so I switched gears. So give yourself space to do that, yeah. I can keep going forever on that.
The other question I ask is, what would you like your legacy to be?
Do you know? You can go first.
I'd like my legacy, and I think this goes back to Kateri's point, is to be a person that can be a resource for others. I would like my legacy to be someone who always try to help other people, because I got to where I'm at because a lot of other people helped me. I had a lot of positive mentors. Not a lot, but I had enough going through the sort of educational system that pointed me in the right directions, and so I try to pay it back by providing the same sort of type of mentoring that other people have provided me. And also I try to use where I'm at to help others, and to help others find their way, to help others in terms of advocating for issues of social justice. And so my legacy is just that I continued, I moved to a different level in terms of my parents' struggle to survive, to one where I'm using sort of their experience to help others, like more people, like not just have to survive. How do we create a society, and to even just have that conversation? So if people can say, well, I remember Dr. Carlos got me to think a little bit different about what our priorities should be. I think I would be happy with that.
A legacy. I live by these two words ever since I was in college, and when sometimes you have like epiphanies or wow moments, and just the two words is overcome cynicism. For me, I'm all about, it's so easy to become cynical. It seems like we're going down to hell every day when you open up the news or read the news. But there is hope, but with hope comes discipline to be part of the reason that there is hope. Okay, you can't just wait on hope. So in the two terms, in the words overcome cynicism, it's don't let being cynical, don't let negativity get the best of you, but do get to work to combat it. So
Where do you see yourself after retirement?
Traveling. Traveling. I studied abroad twice in college. I was in England and then just hopped all over Europe, and Morocco and Turkey. So I got to touch 2 other continents.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, and then I went to Peru the summer after that because I just couldn't get enough. Yeah, some more travel.
I don't see myself retiring. Like I think right now, again, this might change in 5 years, right now I see myself teaching till I drop. But that doesn't mean I don't have a bunch of other things to do. I always tell myself that like my dream job, if and when I ever do retire, is working at Dodger Stadium selling peanuts, because then I can just watch the baseball games all day while I'm obviously working. But like I can sort of pay attention, because if I do that, then I know I would have lived a happy sort of productive life. But I don't see I don't put off. A lot of people do this. This goes back to sort of rethinking the way that you like other people sort of function. Is that people shouldn't wait till retirement to do all the things that they want to do. I think it's really awesome that Kateri was able to study abroad. So try to do those things while you actually have the energy to. So what good does it do me to say I want to go climb Machu Picchu when I'm like 80 and I can't? Like I'm semi-healthy now, so like I should probably try to do those things now.
Exactly.
So yeah, but in terms of just retiring, I'll probably hanging out at my house, talking to my grandkids about the good old days, talking mess with my friends that I grew up with. Hopefully they're still around.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a side thing, but people always ask me while I was working at Disney, like, why are you leaving? Like, you have a comfortable pay here, blah, 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 and like, why are you starting Collective Avenue? You're going to start from scratch. And I'm like, no kids, no mortgage, no excuse. Those are my 3 lines. So, I mean, sometimes life happens and you don't know how it's going to happen. So, do it now, yeah, and learn along the way, but yeah.
How can people contact you?
Do you want to start?
No, you go ahead.
You can follow us on you can follow us on Collective Avenue Coffee. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat now. You could go to our website, collectiveavenuecoffee.com. The contact email there goes directly to me if you have any specific questions, want to learn more about co-ops, want to taste our coffee. We only use single origin, locally roasted, so our coffee beans are mainly from Lord Windsor and Rose Park, based here out of Long Beach. So we do support local business. We're not just the talk, we are the walk as well. And all our milk comes from Clover. It's Clover milk, and it's also a B Corporation, which is also another type of social enterprise. So if you want to learn more about that, I'm always an email away to discuss.
So for me, there's multiple ways of getting a hold of me. I teach here in political science and Chicano Latino studies, so if you go to either one of those websites, you can find my contact information sort of like academically, but in terms of the Foundation for Economic Democracy, you can go to our website, which is econdemocracy.org, and our Facebook and Instagram page are also econdemocracy.org. Our Twitter, which we're barely getting up and running, is econdemocracy6. And those are kind of the general ways you can find us. There's a lot of information on our website also. I got a link to her website to make sure we put them on to support like all the sort of similar concepts that we're doing. But yeah.
Tell us more. We still have time because we still have to 55. So tell us about your organization.
So the Foundation for Economic Democracy is an idea that I got when I was studying it. I wrote my dissertation on worker co-ops. So one of the obviously the oldest ones was Cheese Board, and I learned this really interesting history that during the 1960s there was a couple of former Berkeley students who were really enthralled and got really wrapped up into sort of the democratic movements, the student movements of the 1960s, specifically coming out of the Students for a Democratic Society. They really believed in how do we really make a democratic society, and so college happened. Then they started a business together. It was 3 people, and they started this cheese board that became really popular, and they made pizzas and sort of other kind of baked goods, mainly pizzas from what I understand. But then they got to a point where they were growing, and they didn't feel right about having these social justice values and paying their workers less than they were making. And so what they did is they sold equity in their business to their workers, so that their workers could be co-owners. And they each kept one piece of ownership, so they would all eventually end up owning it equally. and they turned it into essentially what's known as a worker cooperative. And it's sort of democratically run, and it's the most successful one. 10 years later down the line, some other folks come through and say, hey, we want to copy your model. And they were like, well, yeah, that's great. We don't necessarily want to expand because, expansion in worker co-ops, like if you help somebody else start a business somewhere else, you're not going to get anything out of it. So, but they helped them support because they believed in the concept, and they eventually led to the Arismendi sort of, there's 7 or 8 bakeries now, and including the association that handles sort of the payroll and like those types of things. And created a model that sort of helps expand. So I'm in grad school thinking about inequality and sort of social injustice, and I'm trying to look really for solutions. So I noticed that a lot of people who are involved in social justice movements, like right now, like what's the thing that we're doing with Trump is everybody's resist, right? Everybody's always on the defensive, and so I was looking for what people were doing that actually try to implement the vision that we might have for the future, like what kind of society do we want to live in? And I came across specifically this one worker cooperative, it was a nonprofit that helped start worker cooperatives in the Bay Area, and they helped start cleaning services, like businesses that were cleaning services, and so it was Latino women. And I saw how they were impacting these women's lives. The cleaning industry is actually really exploitative, normally pays under minimum wage. The women usually have to use toxic chemicals, so it's really bad for their health. And in this instance, it was the women were making double the industry average, so they're making $15 an hour before anybody was even talking about $15 minimum wage. And they had full benefits, healthcare. And they also got to decide that, hey, as a cooperative, we don't want to use toxic chemicals. We want to use, like organic cleaning supplies. And I saw how it impacted their lives, not just financially, but also in sort of like, they learned leadership skills. They learned how to run their own business. They had to do accounting. And so I was really like, sort of taken aback by this sort of this model. So I studied it more, and eventually, I learned as much as I could about economic democracy and the concept. And I didn't want to just learn just because I want to learn and know stuff. I actually wanted to eventually start either a worker co-op myself, or actually start an organization that helps other people build it. And so that's where the foundation for economic democracy comes out of. The interest of setting up a structure that facilitates other people starting these businesses, or even converting them, because you can convert a current business into a worker co-op. There's actually a lot of tax benefits. We'll have to see about that with the new tax plan, the tax scam that's coming out. That's a whole different conversation. But that's where the interest came out of, and so we want to work with anybody who's sort of has these similar ideas. So I actually recently just met Kateri literally 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was actually one of my students who told me about him. I teach a media and American politics class, and she's like, hey, profe, there's this group, this collective coffee business. I don't really know what it is, but I follow them because they seem like they do really cool stuff in the community. And so I looked them up, and I was like, dude, that's exactly what we're trying to replicate here. So let me touch base and see how we can support each other.
And that's how I got the Facebook message on our Collective Avenue page. I'm like, this is awesome, more people that know about co-ops. It's a really big thing in the Bay Area, which is why it's also been more challenging, but just as exciting, if not more exciting, to start. So it's cool that the co-op community, there's different action groups, there's startup co-ops happening here in LA and Santa Ana and Orange County as well. So really just helping each other out to make sure that we're on track to making this accessible and people know what a co-op is, to truly stand by it. And no, a co-op is not a nonprofit. That's a big question we get a lot is, oh, are you guys a nonprofit? It's like, no, there can be for-profit businesses that are good for the community and good for the workers, and that's co-ops.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand that the reason it's important to shop at a co-op, it's the same reason that people say it's important to shop at a small business, but this is actually more specific. If you shop at a co-op, the people directly benefiting from you shopping there are the people that work there. And that means if those people are making better wages, that means that they're going to spend their money probably more locally. So it has a positive impact. That means they're going to have more money. That means that these people can now afford to go to the movie theaters. They can afford to buy other sort of products, which means that that's going to spur job growth. And so it's important for people to realize that, like, you know, if you ever hear about a co-op starting near you somewhere, like, support it, and pay that extra dollar or two that the products might cost, because it's going directly to benefit, like, community members, as opposed to just, you know, it's just, you know, you're paying $6 for a coffee at, you know, Starbucks. That's just going to Seattle or to some shareholder. When you buy at Collective Avenue Coffee, you're specifically, like, funding a business that cares about social justice issues
And internships.
that also creates internships, that also does leadership development of youth in Linwood. And so you're funding an organization, a business that actually pays, is going to pay a lot of dividends for its community. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, like, some of the challenges you guys are facing and where you're all at in your development.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing.
If you want to.
Yeah, no, of course. How much time do we have?
5.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I think a big thing is we need to support local, and not just co-ops, but local businesses, local startups, because, yeah, a lot of the money, like, if you buy a cup of coffee, say because it's easiest example, you buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks, or you buy something at Walmart, half of that money, if not like 2/3 of the money, goes directly to corporate, which is in a random city in a completely different state, and it goes over there, and it doesn't come back to your community. Also, that type of structure doesn't give the opportunity for the workers to grow professionally. Whereas, like, in a local business, there's a lot of leadership development. Every entrepreneur I've met locally are really big on giving back to their community. There is that big social incentive to making their communities better. So definitely support local in that way, and it will translate into dollars. Like, your dollars speak. So where you put your money really impacts. So don't just talk the talk. Your money talks and does a walk.
So if I want to support Collective Avenue Coffee, where can I find you all?
So we're mobile. We're based out of Linwood, but if you follow our Instagram, we do a weekly update of where we'll be. So this week we're at Balam Mexican Kitchen down Long Beach Boulevard. Also, we will be at a screening of Nightmare Before Christmas at Linwood Park with the Linwood Union, a really cool organization there. Usually we're at Car Meets too. I think we're going to do that this Sunday. We're at Car Meets Coffee in Gardena. So we're at a lot of different places. It really comes down to just checking out where we are, and but the end goal is for us to get a brick and mortar. So.
And if you're interested, they're working on doing that. So if you're interested in, like, supporting, or, like, even, you know,
job opportunities,
internship opportunities, even, you know, like, I think they're probably going to do a GoFundMe campaign or something eventually.
Yeah, well, we've done a GoFundMe campaign, which is how we bought our espresso machine. But we're actually growing a lot right now, where we do need to expand our team. So if you want to reach out, see how you can collaborate. Again, it goes back to our name, collective. Like, how can we work collectively? Everyone brings a different talent, so.
And as far as the foundation, we're based in Long Beach, but, like, we want to work with people sort of regionally, sort of like Southern California, South, like, you know, like, we want to sort of develop these programs out of Long Beach, but, you know, close cities nearby, Southeast LA is fine. And if people are asking for us, actually, we're in the process of, we just barely got our first grant. So we're going to be hiring somebody to do economic democracy education, so teaching people about co-ops and doing workshops on them, so that we can create a consumer market that knows that they should be buying at these types of institutions. And if folks are interested in donating, like, we'll take, you know, $5 up to $5 a month, you know, and every little bit helps, so that we can fund some of these different projects and create the knowledge that the Bay Area has. Essentially, the Bay Area, the reason that co-ops are more popular over there is because people kind of know what they are, and they know that they should shop at them because they're better for communities. We want to establish that kind of cultural feel here in Long Beach and sort of southern LA. And so go to our website and, you know, find out more information. Contact us if you want to get involved. We have different committees. We have the communications committee, the research and education committee, and then fundraising committee. So we got to figure out a way to get capital to all these different projects.
Support local.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're down to our last minute or two. But I do want to take the time to thank my guests for taking the time to be here on the Golden Spotlight.
Just want to thank Kateri for inviting me along. I kind of tagged along. Hopefully I didn't take up too much space.
No, it's awesome. I think it's great to have a conversation about co-ops in general. Like, Collective Avenue is just an example, but people could just learn more about it, plugging in that seed.